it's just not fair to try to say.
Did you get Betty Phillips' email about Lawrence times of working? So I didn't really study what Lawrence was doing.
Not too bad. It'd be better if it wasn't so hot.
Right.
For so many straight days. You know, one day a week I could take it, but
It's probably gonna get worse before it gets better.
I know.
It's not hurting anything.
It's not fun.
I don't know if it's necessary, but it's
Well,
not.
and then anyway, the comment,
I'm going to go ahead and call this meeting to order. We're to start at 3:30, and I think we're.
Well,
That's fine. That's fine. Karen? If Jeff comes in late, he can sit there. If you want to sit here, it doesn't matter. Good afternoon and welcome to the July 19, 3:30 Public Health and Safety Committee. Appreciate everybody coming. I like to start on time and try to finish. I'm just going to say this. I know I've been contacted by a lot of people, so I'm not going to rush anything because take time to for us to really look at it, study it, and be able to come back a second meeting. So we'll probably have a second meeting at this point. But before we get started, I would like to introduce to you Kia Downing. She's in the clerk's office if you guys do not know her. She's a beautiful lady, and she was worked in the council office for some time, I think 5.5 years. And before we get started, I just want to us to sing her happy birthday because today is her birthday. So if we could do that real quick, and then we can get on with business. I know Chuck's got a voice. I think I can. There's nothing like that. So let's just sing her happy birthday, and we'll get started. Happy birthday to you. Happy birthday to you. Happy birthday, dear Kia. Happy birthday to you.
many more.
And many more. Thank you. That's just important. Kia's special to me, very special. Okay, approval of the May 20th minutes. Of the May 20th, 2016 minutes. Do we have any questions or concerns about those?
You need a motion? I'll make a motion to approve those minutes.
Okay, so move. There's been a motion made. All those in favor, raise your right hand. And they've been approved. Okay, discussion of the possible action on the ordinance. And I would like for Mr. Kitt to go first, if you would, to kind of explain why we're here today, the concerns that you have, or, I'm sorry, what is your name?
This is Jason McElrath. He's one of the prosecutors in my office that deals with a lot of the dog ordinance issues.
Okay,
So,
if you or Mr. Jason, or you want to add something. I'm sorry, Jason, there's always new faces, and
Just fine.
so I'm sorry.
Yes, the main crux of the amendments that were proposed would address two issues. Two of the trends that I've seen since I've been here, since October of last year, we've had a couple of very serious attacks. In one case where a couple of pit bulls severely injured some people, multiple people, and another case a German Shepherd severely injured a young girl. In both of those situations, the dogs that attacked had never been in municipal court before under our dangerous dog ordinance. They'd never been declared dangerous prior. And so the court in those situations under our current ordinance does not have any discretion at all. The court cannot put the dog down or order its destruction. The dog has to be released to the owner or surrendered to helping hands if the owner decides they want to just surrender the animal. And so in one case, the German Shepherd case, the victim, when she returned home, had to see that dog right next door every day, obviously causing a lot of concern. And so one of the proposals it was to allow the court to put down a dog that causes great bodily harm, regardless of the dog's history, whether it's had any prior offenses or not. The second issue or trend that we've seen, under the current ordinance, if a dog has had a previous dangerous dog case and then gets a second case, the court is required to put the animal down or order that the animal be destroyed in that case. And that's regardless of any injury. So the dog may not have caused any injury, any actual injury on either the first attack or the second attack, but yet it's still being required to be put down. And this proposed amendment is basically to address those two issues. That was why it originally was drafted and put before the council.
So will the second issue, that would give the discretion to the judge?
Yes.
Is that correct?
Yes.
If he feels that, I mean, right now, the dog would be released to go back home, right? But if the
On all first offenses, the dog is either released or surrendered by the owner to helping hands. On all second offenses, currently, the dog is destroyed. And so what we're trying to do is give the court discretion so the court can consider whether
on the
there was...
first offense.
On a second offense,
On
give the
second
court
offense.
discretion. And the proposal actually says it's mandatory to put the dog down if the court finds great bodily harm occurred from an attack. And that could be on a first or second offense.
On the first or second offense?
Right.
Okay. Okay. Are there any questions for Chuck or any comments?
What's the definition of great bodily harm?
I took great bodily harm from the Kansas statute on aggravated battery versus battery. If you strike somebody, it's battery. If you strike somebody causing great bodily harm, it's aggravated battery, which makes it a felony versus a misdemeanor. There's no definition in the Kansas statute for great bodily harm as it applies to aggravated battery, but our Supreme Court for 3 decades or so probably has defined great bodily harm as more than mere bruising, more than ordinary injury, and it's a question for the finder of fact. So if, under the proposal, if the city was charging somebody with possessing a dangerous dog that caused great bodily harm, the city would then have the burden of proof of showing not only that the attack took place, but that it resulted in great bodily harm. And if the court found that the attack took place, the person would be found guilty. If they found great bodily harm, then the dog would be ordered destroyed. So.
Does that answer your question?
Yep,
Do you have any more questions?
I don't.
Okay. Karen?
Thank you. You also suggested in your proposal changing the fees. Could you address that?
Yeah, so let me pull up the, currently, a dangerous dog is defined by ordinance. There's several different subsections that can define a dangerous dog. One subsection would be for attack on a human being. Another subsection would be if off the owner's property, the dog approaches somebody in an aggressive or vicious manner. Even if they don't attack the person, that dog can be found dangerous. So under the proposed amendments, currently it is between $1 and $499 for a dangerous dog, and we've divided it out to where the fine is defined specifically by the type of offense. If it was a attack on another domestic animal that resulted in great bodily harm, the fine would be, I believe it's $250. If it was an attack on a human that resulted in great bodily harm, it would be a minimum fine of $499 and could go up to $1,000. If it was just a dog that was declared dangerous because it approached somebody in a threatening manner, but there was no real attack that took place, then you have the wide range of anywhere between $1 and $499. So we've just kind of went in and tried to clarify by what kind of conduct occurred, what the fine would be, instead of just having a broad range that it all could fit within.
And why is that, Chuck?
Just because we want to get more consistent results in court. consistent based on the type of conduct that happens. We want those cases to be sentenced consistently within each particular category, if that makes sense. Instead of having one attack on a human that may get a $100 fine, and then an apparent attack where there was no actual attack or injury that could get a $200 fine because it may have been a different judge hearing it. Sometimes we do have pro tem judges. We have 2 judges that.
So to keep it consistent.
Right, we just want to keep it consistent for the conduct, between different cases.
Karen, do you remember why we set that up like that? I don't remember. We worked, me and Karen, just a little background here. We worked on this for about 1.5 years, and we thought we had covered all our bases because this ordinance was very loose. So do you recall?
Well, this might be one of the sections that would merit a little more research or at least some case sampling. When I looked at it, what I recalled was, and I've been involved in a couple recently, is that the income levels of the dog owners and the victims vary a lot. If there has been an attack where the skin was broken or a dog was killed, then there are expenses to the victim and to the owner.
Right.
In a perfect world, the owner of the attacking dog is going to pay the expenses for the victim, pay the medical expenses for the victim. Also, the owner of the dog is also going to have fees to pay to Helping Hands or a veterinarian to have that dog held. They may have legal fees to go to court. And to, as I recall, in order to optimize the chances for that person to pay the legal fees for the other people, to pay for their dog's stay at Helping Hands, and so on, recognizing that there would be a lot of other expenses involved and wanting to optimize the fact that people really paid those various bills, we left it at the $0 to $4.99. I need to tear it apart to see absolutely every one, but so there might be then some scaling of the fees, but it wasn't because people did not think dogs or humans were valuable. It was recognizing those other expenses and people's ability to pay, and wanting, for the most part, there was certainly at that time a strong feeling that they didn't want the dogs put down. So it didn't, as much as possible, if a dog could go home, people wanted that to happen. And so not to have people just walk away and leave their dog at Helping Hands because they couldn't get it out. So those are, I may not be remembering everything, but those were some of the considerations.
I think you're correct. Karen, did you have any more questions? Go ahead if you do.
There was another question area, and that had to do with exceptions. There are actually two sections, one that provides some exceptions if there's been an attack on a human, and another one that provides some exceptions if there's been an attack on a domestic animal, and then a third one that bridges them both that talks about an affirmative defense that has another list. The lists don't all match, and by eliminating the section on affirmative defense, which has been proposed, you lose, for instance, the protection, or it appears that you lose the protection if there was an attack on a human, if the dog was defending its owner, such as taking the dog for a walk and it attacks another dog. So I wanted to ask, Chuck and I have had some conversations, but for the committee, for him to talk about why the issue of an affirmative defense as opposed to something else, which is kind of a technical legal thing, as well as his thoughts about whether that issue of, for instance, defending an owner is important to protect.
Currently, and I don't know what all materials were provided to the committee or which materials you've had an opportunity to review, but currently TMC 6.05.010 is where you find the definition of what a dangerous dog is, and that's where I was talking about there's different ways you can find a dog dangerous. If it approaches somebody off of the owner's property in a threatening manner, in an apparent attack, it can be a dangerous dog. Another option is if it attacks somebody it can be a dangerous dog. Within that same section of the ordinance, in a separate subsection, there are two exceptions that are listed. One would be for an attack on a human. A dog cannot be deemed dangerous if and I'm not quoting the ordinance here, but if, this is my term, the victim, the person that was attacked, if that person is trespassing on the owner's land and a dog attacks a human, then that dog can't be deemed dangerous if it's on its owner's land. If the victim of the attack was teasing, tormenting, abusing, or assaulting the dog can't be then deemed dangerous if it attacks that human. And also within the definition of attack on another human, it says unprovoked. So in any situation where a dog attacks because it was provoked, whatever that provocation is, that dog can't be deemed a dangerous dog. And so there are exceptions built into it. The second exception would apply for if the dog attacks a domestic animal and the dog was protecting its owner or litter from an attack or an assault while on that owner's land. So basically, if a stray dog comes onto your land and your dog then attacks that dog, your dog won't be deemed a dangerous dog because it was protecting you from another domestic animal. So that exception's also in there. And again, we still have the unprovoked. So if anything provokes the dog and it attacks, it's not going to be deemed a dangerous dog. What Councilwoman Hiller is talking about is the affirmative defense was deleted out of the ordinance when we proposed our changes. In the dangerous dog ordinance itself, which is 6.05.080 subsection H, it says that it shall be an affirmative defense that a dog was provoked, teased, injured, and was protecting itself, its owner, or its offspring, or another human being. And we proposed deleting that just because it's really duplicative of what's found in the dangerous dog definition itself. And those are, the unprovoked and then the exceptions that I've detailed. So I couldn't conceive of a situation where the affirmative defense would cover something not already covered in the definition of dangerous dog itself. And the issue with an affirmative defense, if we've got two ordinances or two subsections that cover the same area and we want to clean the area up, which are we going to take out, the exception or the affirmative defense? I think it's better to take out the affirmative defense because an affirmative defense is a legal term. It's something that places the burden on the defendant. So you have to go to trial, and it's the defendant's burden to prove, in this case, that its dog was protecting him or her, and that puts the burden on them, and it requires a trial. Whereas the exception, that's something I can look at on the charging level and decide this case doesn't need to be charged. I don't have to charge it and go to trial and see if the affirmative defense is there. Now, if in my charging discretion, I don't think that the case meets the exception and it needs to be charged, the defendant would still be able to raise that as a legal defense that the exception applies, and we could still have a court finding, but it doesn't require us to wait until the trial for them to put that on. So if we're going to take out some of the language to help clean up the ordinance, that would be the area I would recommend taking out as the affirmative defense, because they still have the legal defense based on the exceptions and the definition of dangerous dog. It was just a way of trying to clean up the ordinance. But I want to stress that is not why this ordinance was being proposed. And if the council's not comfortable making that kind of change, then just simply leave the affirmative defense in. The real issue that I was trying to address is the discretion on when a dog has to be destroyed, when it can be destroyed, or euthanized, whatever term you want to use, in situations where it causes great bodily harm or in situations where it may be a repeat offender but has never caused harm.
Those are the questions. I will tell you, I have done some research in the community, and I'll have a report whenever you're ready for what I learned.
Go ahead.
Okay. I wanted to kind of get an update from citizens. It's kind of hard for people to get to a meeting this time, but also wanted to make sure people knew that the issues were out. and saw what kind of feedback I could get. In summary, what I did was I sent an email on Friday, I think, to 2 people that I knew were part of the networks about animal rights issues. And on Sunday morning, I posted on my personal Hiller for Topeka Facebook page a note that said we needed input on this subject. I have now had over 4,000 views of that Facebook post, over 100 responses, as well as emails and some messages. I really appreciate that Chuck did this chart for us, because I wanted something that was a little easier for people to read. So some of those people did request. I sent them the ordinance, the meeting packet that you had, and the chart for comments. Overall, I thought the responses were really good news. The comments were constructive on the Facebook posts, and it appeared, unlike 6 years ago when we did this ordinance, people seemed comfortable with the job that animal control is doing. They seemed comfortable with the work that Helping Hands is doing, and they seemed comfortable with the work that the courts are doing. Yeah, there were some general references, but no flaming nothing. And that's awesome, I think. And I think then that if it's time to look and do some fine tuning, this is a really great time to do it. Out of those responses, I tried to just thin them out. I do have copies of the Facebook things for you to read at your leisure, but I drilled out 7 areas that seemed to be of concern. The first was further defining great bodily harm. What does that mean? And so perhaps we just need to explain it, but anyway. The second was wondering whether, a great deal of concern about mandatory euthanization, and what I was drawing out of that was that people might be more comfortable by just adding in that there would be an option to euthanize on a first offense. Third, consideration even in putting language in there that a full professional behavioral assessment would be done before a dog would be put down. I am advised. I also got a call from Helping Hands, and I also heard from one of the attorneys that worked with us 6 years ago. So I learned along the way that Helping Hands does do a full professional behavioral assessment, a third-party assessment. That language isn't in the ordinance. I don't know if it needs to be, but certainly that came out. The fourth was whether we should leave the fines the same or do some adjustment on those higher fines. The fifth was to clarify those exceptions, maybe work on the wordsmithing. The chart kind of points up how they're different, and just decide what to do about them and that issue of the affirmative defense. That being the sixth, actually, and I guess I just had 6. On the side, there were 2 other things that came up, and that would be the definition of domestic animal. A couple people asked about chickens and bunnies. If a dog had gotten into somebody's yard, was that really a reason to put a dog down? Technically, it is right now. And then also some conversation that really did come out of 6 years ago, suggesting that we do take advantage of the city's website to put some more educational material out. Because there was a threat, of course, that educating the owners was a real issue, really, behind most of these.
We have a lot of
problems.
educating to do.
Yeah.
Hold that thought, Karen. So Chuck, the way that it's written now, or the proposed change, if a dog did kill a rabbit, then they could put it down?
Hold on one second, let me get to the definition of,
So I might have some problems. My dog's brought home a rabbit, a duck. I don't even
Sure.
know where he got a duck, a fish. He brought home a fish. I mean, some of that's in their nature, you know what I'm saying? And these
Correct.
are wild animals. It's about 2 months ago he brought home a fish. I don't know where he got it other than the creek.
I'm having trouble getting online here connecting. And so I'm
Okay.
just trying to go through documents I have on my computer, but the
Okay.
definition of the dangerous dog ordinance only applies to humans and domestic animals. So the answer to that question would be whether or not rabbits were included within the definition of a domestic
Right, right.
animal.
If you'll let me know that.
Sure. I'll see if I can,
Print copy of the ordinance.
oh, you got it, okay,
It's in the meeting packet.
okay.
Okay, I'm sorry. Karen, were you through, or did you have more?
That really was it, but I should point out, I did hear from Helping Hands if people had questions, and then just late this afternoon, heard from the attorney. She had some technical comments about that affirmative defense issue as well, and just, again, it fits right in with those comments.
Okay. Is that all?
Yes.
Okay.
I've- Certainly questions. There are a couple people here that have stories. I have other information, but that's the results of the survey.
Okay, thank you for doing that.
Councilwoman Ortiz,
Yes.
would it be appropriate for me to make another comment now?
Sure.
On the affirmative defense issue, if we're going to keep the affirmative defense in there, it needs to be fixed, because currently subsection H, and that's a 6.05.080, it says it shall be an affirmative defense to subsections F and G that the dog was provoked, teased, injured, and was protecting itself, its owner, or its offspring, or another human being. And F and G are only the second attacks on a human or another domestic animal.
Okay.
So it doesn't make sense if we want that to be an affirmative defense, which I'm not saying it's necessary, but if you want the affirmative defense in there, I don't see why it would not apply to an animal that on its first offense versus its second offense. So that, if it's not taken out, it probably needs to be clarified to fix.
Does everybody understand that?
I agree. If there's duplication, then reconciling it, whether or not the terms of affirmative defense go in there, it seems like it wouldn't be that hard to fix it, and then it'll be clean.
Okay. Elaine?
Thank you, Madam Chair. I was glad to see this go to the committee process, because I think in the committee process, we work with the pros and the cons as to why this came about and why it's happening. I really like, and I hadn't really read this until right now, because we've got a pretty good stack of information here, but it says, improve safety, save tax dollars, save animals. The Topeka Police Department and City Attorney's Office have reviewed the current city ordinances regarding animal control efforts. After consulting with animal control officers, Helping Hands, Humane Society, the municipal court, city prosecutors, and numerous volunteer experts, the proposed ordinance was prepared. So what this tells me is that this isn't the first time this is all being discussed. It's been discussed numerous times with numerous people. And so that's how you come together and you form the best ordinance or law that we can put together. So my questioning goes to, with TPD being involved in Helping Hands, and whether or not this was based on another city ordinance that has had success with what we're proposing to change, or whether it's addressing the questions and the issues that came up with the court system and trying to resolve issues with dangerous dogs. So that's my first question, Chuck, is it sounds like you guys have had meetings to discuss what the changes that are needed that we need to have. So who is all giving the blessing to the proposed changes that you're giving us, that the city, has proposed to change? Is it everyone?
No, the changes that I'm proposing would only affect prosecution. It wouldn't necessarily affect what ACOs are doing out there on a daily basis. It wouldn't affect the police department. It's only the end result in prosecution. So this is just...
So it's what happens in court.
Right. This has been discussed with the legal department, but no, ACOs have no control over what would happen to these dogs once they're in court under the proposed amendment, so
Okay. But my question is, are they supporting the change?
I have not discussed the change with our ACOs.
Okay, so animal control officers, and have we discussed these changes with groups like SCARS or Positive Paws or any of those entities that represent animals in Topeka?
No, and part of the reason is because this ordinance the proposed change will result in the destruction of fewer animals, because currently the court's required to put an animal down on a second offense. And I discussed this with Councilwoman Hiller. Part of the problem that creates is we have animal control officers who are somewhat reluctant to cite an animal for being a dangerous dog in situations where there wasn't an attack, even though under our ordinance it could be a dangerous dog. And the reason they're reluctant is everybody knows on a second offense it's going to get put down. We have citizens that I know are reluctant for the same reason. They're animal lovers. They don't want to see a dog get euthanized. And the whole goal of that particular part of the change is to give the court discretion and not make it mandatory that those dogs be put down. That way, when we handle the cases in municipal court, we can start handling them more consistently. We don't have to avoid the dangerous dog label, knowing that this dog will eventually get put down, because that's not our goal. Our goal is public safety, and we want the court to have discretion to not have to put the dog down, so we can start charging cases more consistently and start getting more consistent results.
Okay. So you're pretty assured, if I may, Madam Chair?
Yes, you may.
You're pretty assured that our groups that represent animals are going to be okay with the changes that we're making?
The change on second offenses, I cannot fathom any reason they would not be in support of changing the mandatory destruction to a discretionary. There may be an issue with the other change, and that is making the destruction mandatory if great bodily harm is found. I certainly think that at first blush they would object to that. I think if they understood what great bodily harm is and how that process would work, and it would require a court finding, I don't know if they would be opposed to it still or not.
And I agree with you. We get so many emails about our elephants at our zoo going to a sanctuary, and I disagree with everything that they're saying in those emails.
Right.
So do you know if what we're doing, if what we end up with is going to be like other cities are surrounding us, or is this something we're kind of out there on our own, or is this very similar to other cities in Kansas?
Our current ordinance has consistencies with Wichita, Lawrence, and Junction City. Now, they're not all identical. Some of them look like they've taken different parts, and so we're not exactly uniform right now with any of those cities that I've looked at. I don't see anybody doing what I've proposed here, going to the great bodily harm. I have not seen any other ordinance like that. And that's why I turned to the state law when I was trying to figure out how we could shift our destruction of animals to those that actually cause the serious injury. So no, I've not seen any other city that I've looked at that is doing it similar to what I'm proposing.
Okay, thank you.
Thank you. Madam Chair, yeah, I think that's the part that I was missing, is that there's going to be fewer destroyed dogs. And I think that's kind of where, when this came up, I got a lot of email and phone calls of people that were thinking that, you know, if your dog goes out and scratches the neighbor child, that your dog will be put to sleep. And I think it's kind of where us as a city, we need to do better on communicating that message better. I also wanted to ask, on the matrix, are we looking at column 1, 2, or 3 on this sheet right here?
I didn't create this sheet. I think Councilwoman Hiller may have created this or had it created by somebody for her, but I just basically filled in the blanks to answer the questions. The proposed amendment, we don't differentiate between minor injury and no injury. The only difference is going to be, under the proposal that you have, is great bodily harm versus not great bodily harm.
Mm-hmm.
So there's only 2 columns in the proposal, but I think this just helps make it clear the 3 different scenarios that we face, even though they're only going to actually fall into 2 categories under the proposal.
Okay. I think it's a lot clearer now.
Okay.
One more follow-up, Madam Chair. is this then taking out, you said the current breed-specific language would be repealed. Is that in this ordinance or some other ordinance that we had proposed with all this information?
I think the memo you're looking at, that was written by our former city attorney when our current ordinance was adopted. And our current ordinance took out the breed-specific
Specific,
pit bull
okay.
language. So I just put in that memo there because it has some FAQs about how our current
Right.
ordinance was supposed to be utilized.
Right.
And so I thought that might
Okay,
help
it
give you
did
some
help.
guidance.
Thank you.
It is not dated, so it might be worth, when you find something like that in the future, penciling in, I think it's probably July 2010 or something.
I think when that memo was drafted, I don't recall off the top of my head, either the week before or the week after that ordinance was passed.
Right, which was August 2010.
Right.
Yeah. Yeah, I had to look at it and go, I recognized it.
Okay, Your Honor, do you have anything to add?
No,
No?
respectfully, no.
Okay, all right. Jason,
No, ma'am.
you sure? This your time?
I'm positive.
Okay. I did say that we would have public comment, and I don't see Betty Phillips here. But if one of you ladies, did you want to speak to this? If you would come to the podium, please, and speak one at a time. We will listen to some testimony. Can you please state your name for the record, please?
Yes, my name is Renee Hall. I live just about a mile or two directly west of here in the area before, bought one called Kenwood. I live right off of First Street. And I had an experience of a dog attack of my dog. I have pictures, but they're on my phone, so I guess I could pass them around later. That was June 8th. So there was more than just commemorating the tornado. I was having one of myself in my own yard, and that was about 1:15 in my yard, front part of my yard, right near my fence. Porch. I have a bench, and I have a small dog that's about 10, 11 years old that I had out with me on my porch, sitting in a chair. So we were both out there, and he was leashed. His name is Buddy, and he's like a 13, 15-pound little, cute little dog, mix of Lhasa, Poodle, Yorkie something. Yorkie mix is what the vet calls him. But he doesn't like other dogs in his yard, and especially gets turned on by big dogs. So here I'm sitting there on the porch getting ready to call my daughter, had my phone, and up around my tree, and in front of me presents itself a pit bull. I saw he had right away, he had a collar and tags, and I've been self-appointed in my neighborhood like many of my other neighbors are. We're very dog friendly, and we also make a lot of effort in getting loose dogs found, and we post a lot on our Nextdoor and our Facebook page for Kenwood. So automatically I was like, okay, is he friendly? He was just sniffing my flowers, wasn't paying any attention to me. I said, you've got tags. Let me get you hooked up, and we'll get you home or wherever you came from. Not aware of what the danger this dog could have provided, because in the back of my mind, I'm forgetting about my buddy on the porch. So there was my first mistake. I was thinking more of the dog, taking care of him, getting him to his rightful owner, and I took a picture of him, 2 pictures. I have my phone. I can do this. I can do this. And Buddy came down the steps, and that was it. It was all over for him. I mean, he lived, but I mean, he didn't have any fun with that dog before even, because the dog immediately grabbed him by the neck, inserted his teeth into his throat, had him fully in his jaws, and the fight was on. Because Buddy couldn't get loose, and this dog literally shook him, yanked him around, drug him around, and kept gnawing. I went ballistic because I knew not to get in the middle of that. The reason he was out with me is I have a tiny little Yorkie inside that decides to pester Buddy a lot and get him in a fighting mode. So he was out with me to give him a break from that, and I've gotten bit from that. So I kind of automatically knew to grab anything, but I didn't. I just had logs and rocks and flower pots, and I started screaming. And my neighbor over here, Sarah, heard me from a whole block over to Cortland. My neighbor, catty corner police officer came, people down the street, around the corner. There was automatically 6 people in my yard helping me while I was just totally going ballistic. And somebody threw things at the dog, and he drug Buddy over to my side yard, to my next door neighbor, and at that point dropped him. And I was so weak from all the adrenaline, I was holding myself up with a bench, and somebody said he needs to go. He needs to go to a doctor immediately. And the police officer, ex-police officer, took hold of the situation with me because I was totally incoherent and said, I'll go get my truck. Where do you want to take him? And people got him a box and wrapped him in a blanket. The women carried him to his truck, and they helped me in, and we went to Stone. Now, where this all, I'm not briefed on all the law and all that, so I'll just narrow down my experience and what I would like to see happen, and it may be in there, so you'll have to advise me. But here I am, 2 p.m., and a half hour after it happened, fully, completely shook, knowing my dog's still alive because he was in the box, and he raised his head like, heck, where are we? This has air conditioning, wow. And we went to Stone, and they immediately took him in and did a preliminary exam, and they gave him, they shaved him and examined his wounds here, side of the neck, the ear was torn, and they thought that he possibly had a contusion. But he was alert, and he was holding his weight, so things were looking good there. They gave him an anti-inflammatory and a couple different pain meds, and they took him back to a cage, and then I met with the animal control officer. And at that point, you know, I posted on Kenwood for our neighborhood to make sure all the neighbors. I'd ended up having 55 different posts, some of which were mine with pictures later. But what I found out after meeting with the doctor, there was a shift change there, so they had to catch him up to that he, his extent of his injuries would be unknown until they could do surgery to get into what impact the jaws to the throat had. And so he was still sort of on thin ice. And the whole thing there where I was stuck was they would not proceed until a certain amount of the bill was paid. And I was given a page and a half of all of their recommendations, the estimate, and the low side was $880 to $1,260. And they told me I would have to have 1,000 of that paid down before they would even begin. And basically I was already in the hole because they had already medicated him and examined him. So the animal control officer told me that my good neighbor here and my neighbor to the south was hearing my screams, were cognizant enough, and that I wasn't, in my absence of my state of mind, called animal control officer. And they both took it on themselves, being good dog people and neighbors, and chased this dog about, I was told, 3 blocks south and 2 blocks and back down. He made a full circle and identified his home by going right in the backyard. So when the animal control officer arrived, his work was done there. Thanks to my neighbors, they solved the problem of finding out where this dog was from. So really it was just 1/2 block from my alley and 2 houses down on Quinton. The dog was just in his own neighborhood, scouting around, and found us. The man at the door confirmed with the AC officer that yes, in fact, that was his dog that was in the backyard now, and that he did not know he was out. And he was home with the kids, and the guy, AC officer, advised him to get to Stonehouse now. You have a victim, you have a dog whose life's hanging in the balance, and a bill needs to be paid. And I didn't add this, but I was unable to come up with the money. Been operating on 1 part-time job, and those hours were not adequate enough. So here I am. That's the point I want to make, in case I miss it right there, is that my dog was in a cage in the back room, needing surgery, needing to be examined to see if he had head injury, not knowing what else was wrong with him. And they're giving me an estimate that says $1,000 needs to be paid before we can proceed. The animal control officer said, the man at the house said, the owner, that he would not be able to leave. He had children at home, and he would have to put this burden on his wife. We were not given her number at that point, but he said she would call and come by after work, and she would be working till 5. So here it is, 2-ish, and I'm very upset that my dog isn't getting the treatment he needs, and because of money, and I had to wait that time. So I'm putting my appeals out, I'm calling my sister, I'm applying for credit with them, and kind of comes back because that was a very difficult. And I just realized what a victim I had become also, that I couldn't do anything for my dog. And I really didn't know it was going to make it or what else was wrong. But there was a person out there that wouldn't leave work. And there was a man there that was responsible and wouldn't even come. And I felt very powerless and very helpless. I couldn't do anything. I was making appeals on Nextdoor asking for advice, and people were giving me opinion. Nobody was going to come and help me financially. They were all saying I ought to press charges and all that, when I realized you got to go to court to do all that. And then I realized we too become victims. Not only the dog that's in great bodily harm, but I might lose him because I can't even pay. And what's more is I have no financial hold or legal control over these individuals. I don't even know who they are at this point. I don't have a phone number. I don't have an exact address. And I don't have any recourse that they will actually come there and pay. So I'm that 3 hours was very difficult. And every time I went to see Buddy, he was alert, but he wanted out of there so bad. It was heightening my anxiety, and I couldn't do anything for him. So I waited, and at 5:30 she came. And I let her talk to the people up there about the payment plan and about the applying for credit. And then she came over to talk to the AC control officer and I. And she said, you know, I'm moving in 2 days. And I said, well, you know, this bill needs to be paid, but his life is hanging in the balance. What can you do? And she said, well, I have $400 now that's supposed to be for my rent, but I'll pay that. I said, they told me it was $1,000. That won't be enough. You need $600 more. And there's a dog here that needs help. And she said, I'll do what I can. And she left. I got her phone number that she's never answered since. But that was it. And I realized the impact of it, that animal control officer, that there was nothing I could do. And I still didn't have any reasonable reassurance that Buddy would get worked on that night. His surgery would be scheduled at 8 or 9, but there was no hope that that was going to happen. So the animal control officer and I talked about strategy, and he encouraged me strongly to not press any charges right now. He told me, you can file a dangerous dog and go to court, but if they're moving and Buddy needs that money now, if you go ahead and do that, and they have all these charges, because already he got dog at large, he wasn't vaccinated, he wasn't tagged, and they already had up to $500 to $600 charges right there. I don't know if that was communicated yet. But she said, you start heaping charges and another $1,000, you probably will never see a dime of that. So I kept my mouth shut, and I focused on, let's just get the $1,000 and let's get his surgery. I want his life to be saved, and we'll deal with that later. So I chose not to do the dangerous dog at that point. After all, you know, a person wasn't attacked. Buddy is still alive, and his most important need right now was surgery. I knew I could, and I wasn't very in a good state of mind, and I knew I could deal with that later. He said I could. And so he said, we probably won't see her again. And I said, I'm thinking the same thing too. Lo and behold, 30 minutes later, she walked in because she kept saying, I can't get credit. I don't have good credit. I can't get their care credit that I too applied for. She said, we're moving and I need every dollar to get out the door to Colorado Friday. And I said, but my dog's life hangs in balance. Listen, you have to get that money. I finally got firm with her. And she said, I'll do what I can. And so she left, in 30 minutes she came back with it. So the green light shone, and I heard them talking about any balance due, because it was $1,260. And I was like, I'm still gonna get stuck with this bill, you know? And who knows, it could go even higher by the time they get in there. And so I thought, what legal recourse do I have on them? And she said, absolutely none. And I said, what do you have on them? She said, absolutely none. So here's this woman, scot-free, no charges, no dangerous dog, no enforcement to pay, and my dog's in there needing medical care. So she pays $1,000. That was a real good thing. But still, all they had on her was a phone number, and that call us back and we'll get up a payment plan and we'll see if there's any refund. So to fast forward this, Buddy did get his surgery. I got a call at 10:30 from Dr. Carter that he did survive. There was even chances, you know, a dog that old doesn't survive anesthesia or take it very well. He had a suture from here to there by that point. When I went to see him the next day, staples, he looked horrible, but they had to get in because there was neck muscle damage on each side and at the trachea level. Thank God the trachea wasn't damaged, and the esophagus wasn't damaged. So he can breathe and he can eat. They sewed up his ear. They patched up his little wounds around the neck. They put a drainage tube in, so he looked horrible, but he was perky, and he was excited about seeing me, and I got to go in and offer that. Anyway, the bill came to he had to stay about 3 days. The bill came to $732, so those people actually got a refund. So Buddy's fine. They moved, I guess, and now they're Colorado's problem. I went ahead and decided not to file the charges. I really didn't want to visit inside of a courtroom with this. I wanted to focus on Buddy and other actions like this. And I also wanted to not be a burden to a young family with children, that they would have to keep coming back and coming back and coming back to Topeka and to court dates and impound their dog. And I really am a dog-friendly person, so I really didn't like the idea of a dog being destroyed either. But I know there are definite issues for that happening. Anyway.
Ma'am, I'd like to thank you for your testimony. If you could close it out.
Okay.
And did you want to speak, madam? Sure.
There's more pictures you can go for. So thank you very much.
Thank you.
I just had a couple questions. My name is Sarah Velasquez, and I also live in Kenwood. I just had a couple questions. I know we discussed that all this was discussed, but I just want to make sure I'm clear. And I know that you said this table, that you didn't create this table, but that you did help fill it in with some of the answers. So my first question was on the attack on a human, and you said that, I want to make sure I'm clear on this, that you said that there is no difference between minor injuries and no injuries, correct?
Correct, under the proposal.
So this number 3 really doesn't apply then. It was just your way of designating that the no injuries and minor injuries are like 2 and 3 are the same thing, and then 1 is
Right.
the same. Okay.
Right.
So there is potential that if a dog is just aggressive towards somebody, that the judge could deem them a dangerous dog and have them euthanized for that?
Under the current ordinance, if a dog, and let me find the exact language for you here. Under the current ordinance, if any dog in a vicious or threatening manner approaches any person in apparent attack upon the person, and then it goes on to say basically off of the owner's property, that dog can be deemed dangerous.
Okay.
So there's no attack deemed necessary to be declared a dangerous dog currently.
And the proposed ordinance would say that that's up to the judge whether or not they would be deemed dangerous or not.
No, the proposal that I've made will not in any way affect the definition of a dangerous dog. It only affects what happens to that dog, depending on if
Okay, so we'll determine whether or not they are euthanized.
Right. Under the current ordinance, if it's a second offense, the dog's required to be euthanized.
But if this happens, if this is a first offense, under your proposal, they could potentially euthanize them.
No, under the proposal, the court would be required to if the dog caused great bodily harm,
But if it's just,
even if it's a first offense.
minor injuries or no injuries, then could they still be deemed a dangerous dog?
It would still be a dangerous dog, but the court
Would not be euthanized.
The court would not even have the option to
Okay.
euthanize. The euthanization only comes on great bodily harm regardless of history, or the court has the option on a second offense to euthanize it.
So, okay, I guess this brings up another question. You're saying that if they cause great bodily harm on the first offense, under the proposal, then is it mandatory that they be euthanized?
Yes.
Or is it the option of the judge that they be euthanized?
As the ordinance has been proposed, it's mandatory.
Mandatory.
If a finding of great bodily harm is made, it's mandatory euthanization.
Okay. Next question, I guess that answers my other question, so. I just wanted to say that I'm a pet owner, I'm a dog owner, and I guess I guess I do have another question. In the sense of I can't remember what it's called, between the two, the exemptions and
The exception versus the affirmative defense.
Yes. So I guess one of the questions I asked Karen Hiller was that if I'm walking my dog, I walk my dogs all the time. So if I'm out walking my dog and a dog attacks us, and my dog harms or kills that dog or a person, then is it understood that my dog is still protected under this, even though we're not on our property?
Right, and again, the changes will not affect the definition of what could be a dangerous dog. So for example, if you're walking your dog and you or your dog are attacked by another dog and your dog attacks, the definition of a dangerous dog is besides what I just read, approaches somebody in a threatening manner. It could be if any dog which unprovoked attacks or bites. So in that situation, clearly your dog is being provoked
Okay.
because because it or you are being attacked by another dog.
Okay.
But there's also the specific exception that would still remain, and that would be, and I lost my place here, but the specific exception, other than unprovoked, would remain that if somebody's trespassing on your land, if somebody's teasing, tormenting, abusing, or assaulting the dog. So there's really a couple of different exceptions built in that will remain just as they are right now.
I was just trying to understand because most of the language says on your property, so I was just trying to understand if that was also if I was not on my property, if I was attacked, then my dog protected me, if they would still be protected.
Right,
So
right.
that's all I want to know. Okay, I just wanted to know. Thank you.
Thank you.
Cortese, I just forgot that I had one more suggestion to tie in to that I was gonna make as a.
Okay, you can make it real quick.
Can I just? So when I was describing that I was sitting there feeling very much victimized and helpless and my dog wasn't getting the help, I was thinking, there's a little loophole here that prevents the owner from being responsible at that moment. They could move, leave, skip town, disappear, and never be charged. These people were just less than 2 days away from moving anyway, but anything could have been possible. So in other words, they got off pretty easy. I mean, if they'd had the right tags and the vaccinations, they would have just got the dog at large charged. And because I withheld the dangerous dog till they paid, until my head cleared, I didn't. So in other words, I was thinking without any money that I could help myself pay Buddy, I would have to go to court, see, to get that back. And that forces me in a direction that maybe I didn't want to go at that point. But that was what the animal control person, the only way I could have got that back. I had a dog attack 6 years ago just in my neighborhood. So I know about the court thing, and that's why I prevented from going. But what I was thinking is that, and I was talking to a neighbor, that if we, all this dangerous dog definition, if in fact a person comes to register their dog that is deemed by the city, if that's where you're at with it, I don't know. I know there's been a lot of controversy about if we label a dog dangerous just by the breed. I know that's They have to make an offense or something before they're considered dangerous. But if we know there's been a pattern of this breed of dog that this person wants to own and come to register, hopefully they will be legal, then they have to pay into a fund that's like a victim's fund or proposed victim fund because they are having a dangerous animal. They are choosing to have what we classify as a dangerous animal. And therefore then when there is an attack, there isn't this big vacuum where the victim, whether it be a child without insurance or anything else, like Buddy, used Buddy, hanging in the balance, that doesn't get medical care. How fair is that? Anybody off the street can go get emergency care at the emergency room for anything. You know, I was talking to a homeless guy. He said, I had leg cramps and I was on the corner holding my signs and I just called the AMR to pick me up, you know? I mean, I couldn't do that. I couldn't stomp my feet and say, operate on Buddy, he's gonna die. I couldn't go anywhere to get any help. My dog was literally gonna die, and let's say, and I was the victim. And these people, they could have skipped town, never showed up, never answered their phone, never been at home, and the dog could have been taken to grandma's or out of town, or moved early. So I think that definitely needs to be addressed. If that detail of it hasn't been looked at, that needs to be magnified and looked at, because that's what's happening outside our walls. Could be happening right now. And if you have insurance, you can rush your child very clinging to life to emergency room, great. And you can deal with that with the insurance company later. I didn't have that option.
Thank you, ma'am. I think
Okay.
your point is
Thank
well
you.
taken.
Keep that in mind.
I think we did talk about that when we studied that the last time, Karen.
An emergency fund?
No, about specific dogs, because I know the pit bull thing was the big one. And I mean, a vicious dog can be a little dog, it could be a Chihuahua dog, it could be any dog. I've had one of those little weenie dogs run up my leg and bite me on my cheek. You know, I could believe it just happened so fast, you know. But anyway, I thought that we couldn't really,
Well, we were undoing some breed-specific
Yeah, yeah.
6 years ago, and I don't know that any of the proposals that we have today are proposing to reverse that. A little bit of testimony, but it's been so clear that the effort we took before was to make sure that we had defined dangerous dog.
Right.
And that we had also, the best that we could, prohibited the kinds of behaviors or circumstances that would make a dog misbehave, such as tethering all the time, or not having food and water and not having shelter,
abuse or fighting.
the kind of abusive sorts of things, to create the best possible environment for all breeds. And yeah, we did learn that, what is it, poodles or something that have the worst reputation for biting?
Yeah.
It's pretty funny. Whatever it was a smaller dog, not on everybody's A list.
Yeah.
It wasn't Shepherds or Dobermans or the ones, no.
okay.
I did have a follow-up question for the second testimony. So Chuck, with what you're proposing, how would you see, I mean, a not uncommon situation is two dog owners, dogs on leashes, dogs come toward one another, grrr. It's hard to say which one's the aggressor sometimes, depending on the dog.
Right.
Similarly, people take their dogs to the dog parks now for an opportunity to take the dogs off leash. And so then you've got a pack situation, which dogs genetically just or instinctively can change behavior in. They're not on their own property, though, in either case. So how do you deal with that issue of provoking, if that's necessary, to sort out a case?
I don't know that I can give you a specific answer. I've not seen that situation come up. I'm sure it happens where dogs start gathering in the pack mentality at the dog park, and then eventually it does lead to skirmishes and probably biting. And I've never seen a ticket issued for dangerous dog or anything like that at the Bark Park, for example, at Gage. I honestly don't know. The ordinance right now doesn't, in my opinion, address that specific kind of act. So I would assume, as the prosecutor looking at a charging decision, if a dog was cited, if an owner was cited for a dog that attacked, I would just have to talk to the people that were there find out what they saw. Was one dog really being provoked, or was it just being an aggressor and attacking other animals? And I would just have to make a decision, like I do in a lot of cases, on whether or not to file charges. So that may not answer your question, but I think that's the best I can do right now.
Thank you. I just want to make sure, and this probably gets back to just reworking that exceptions language so that it's real clear. Chuck and I have talked a little bit, but what I think, a thing that I think is really important is that the ordinance is written in a way that the average citizen can sit home at night and Google it and read it and know what's expected and what behaviors are protected and which ones aren't. And so with that duplication and the confusion, I think if we can clean that up, that'll help.
Sure.
Thank you.
Okay. Owen, did you have anything else? No? No? Your Honor? Jason? Kit, did you have anything else?
Just looking through Chapter 6.05, which is where our dog at large and dangerous dog and all that stuff is found, I didn't find the specific definition of a domestic animal. I know it's been defined in state statute, what domestic pets are. So that may be something we want to look at including. And like I said, I can't get online, so I didn't have an opportunity to search the rest of the code, but that's a question I can certainly answer, given a little bit of time. But yeah, I didn't see domestic animal defined in Chapter 6.05, which
Yeah, I don't think it is.
you would think it would be, but it's not. It's referred to several times throughout that chapter, but.
Okay.
Are we going to meet again then, once that gets cleared up?
Yes, what I wanted to do was, I wanted everybody to get this information, take what the testimony that we've heard, and also, from our attorney and also from different people, and kind of study, and we'll come back and regroup. I don't want to take if it's okay with you guys, I'd like to study this, make sure we're comfortable before we just jump up and take a vote. I thought I'd hear more testimony here today because I've gotten several calls, but for whatever reason, we haven't, so hopefully they'll contact us via email or whatever. So if everybody's okay, we'll just actually go ahead and close out the meeting, go ahead and adjourn, and we'll study it, and we'll come back in a later date. Surely, if you have any questions or concerns, to contact Charlie and get your questions answered. I think there's some concerns that I have, even from before when we've met. We've got to do a better job at educating everybody. We still have people in my district that tether, and you're not supposed to tether all day, And again, that's, I'm looking at Kia, she's shaking her head, yeah, you got that right. And again, that has an effect on how that dog's behavior is, and we learned that loud and clear. So I just think we need to do a better job at that. How do we do it? I don't know, but it's something that we all should have on our minds to do. And I think Helping Hands has done a wonderful job at doing all that they can with the dogs that they pick up, and they've been real responsible. And I think that came out of our first meeting as well. So, but however we choose to do it, so that everybody understands the law and the ordinances going forward. Yes, Karen?
Yeah, I think as we consider, hopefully the 6 points are now 7, counting what is a domestic animal, we could consider and look at. I do think I heard some answers to some of them, but some of them I still think need some language. But then if people think about, read the testimony that came in through the email, I think we can hook it to the City of Topeka's Facebook page if we want, but I just brought it for you. But think about stories. I know that there are, it's interesting to hear Renee's story. I know there are still people that wonder why that German Shepherd that attacked that little, I thought it was a little boy, but boy or girl, I guess it was a little girl, is still next door. And there apparently was some tethering. And so what was it that, if we're going to set up an adjustment to a system, particularly with the discretion that the ACOs have of not even taking the dog, we want to make something that's not so tight that they simply won't take the dogs when there really has been bad behavior. I think we have to think about that big picture and kind of think about some of those stories and either ask Chuck what would happen if this is different, or try and think it through ourselves.
Okay, is everybody satisfied? Okay. We'll meet, we'll come back with another date, maybe in a couple weeks. Will that give you guys time? Kind of look at it? Okay. All right, thank you, this meeting's adjourned.
Thank you.